steering wheel. Somebody tell him to give it to me.
There's something loose between my legs.
I don't know. Let go!
I'm heavier than a freaking boat.
Nothing you can say can make that any better.
Yeah, nobody. No more radio for the rest of the race.
I'm going home.
Hello and welcome to DRS FC, an F1 podcast by soccer nerds. I am a soccer nerd. I am Donald. We are here to recap the Mexico City Grand Prix. I also have two soccer nerds with me, my friends. Andre, first of all, how are you doing, Andre?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
It's been a fun weekend, or a week and a half for me. I know you had a little bit of a difficult week, but we're glad to have you back. You were missing the previous two episodes. We also have Deepti with us. Deepti, how are you doing?
I'm okay. Also not a great weekend, but this race was fun. I literally just finished watching it before we jumped on here, so that was fun. Chaotic.
Yeah. Chaotic was the word of the weekend, especially on Sunday. Let's get right into the Mexico City Grand Prix, which was, first of all, won by Lando Norris. We'll talk about the implications of Lando winning a little bit later, but first of all, there was a wild few laps to start this race, but somehow Lando kind of emerged from the fray as the leader and led wire to wire. He had the pole, was able to avoid most of the chaos behind him. And Andre, dare I say he's developing a little bit of dog and holding off the rest of the field?
A little bit, maybe. I think the stat that I kept hearing in all the preview pods that I was trying to catch up on was that I think at Mexico City since 2021, only one driver who started on pole kept that lead for that lap and went on to win the race, and that was Max Verstappen. And so it was pretty impressive, but also I gotta say, he also got a good start and a good second phase to his start, which meant that he wasn't involved in all the nonsense. Other people were involved in the nonsense. Then there were cars going off track, getting ahead of them, and they had to slide back so that they avoided penalties. And so it was clear air from then on. Everybody else behind him kind of. What was that meme? It's not a meme, but it's like a video like of a simulation of all the cars, and they're just like bouncing all over the place like gravity doesn't exist. And that's kind of like what was going on behind him. And then he's just like, well, I'll just keep on going. So there's a little bit of dog, certainly dog to get on pole. That was an incredible pole lap. That was like one of those that they always say Max Verstappen does, like one of those, like nobody's touching this time. That was really impressive. And then, held it for by the end of the race, it was probably a close to 30-second lead over Leclerc. It was impressive from that perspective.
He had, I want to say he had like a 30-second lap lead, maybe 25 laps into this race. And it was to the point where we kind of looked and we're like, oh, like maybe there's going to be some drama in the changing in the pits because, McLaren has not had great pit stops this year. And all of a sudden we looked up and go, oh, he has 33 seconds. Like he could get a brand new car and still emerge in first place. But Deepti, your thoughts on Lando and maybe the dog being made out of clay?
Yeah. When was the last time we did an update on his ex-dog status? I don't remember where we're at now, but it's definitely jumped up a little bit, I'd say, after this race. But like you said, Andre, like a lot of the teams also in the previews, they were like, you know what, this race especially is like important to have the clean air in front of you. And as Oscar always says, clean air is king. And especially because it's like thin atmosphere and the tires degrade a lot, you really do want that clean air. So once he got out, that first stretch down to turn 1 and then even into like turn 4, that's the most important. After that he was clear and it was free to go, didn't make any mistakes. Pit crew did their job as well, so maybe a little bit of increase of X-Dog.
I was going to say, I think the not making any mistakes key is really important for him because we've seen him dominate races. Like y'all remember last season, Singapore, he dominated that race, but almost drove straight into the wall about three different times. Now, we didn't see much of Lando's race because the race director had other things that they needed to focus on. But I feel like if he would have, went wide or, went off the track or something like that, they maybe would have shown it to us. So I'm going to assume the fact that they didn't show us that footage is that it doesn't exist. And I think that is an important thing for him. He had a very clean race. He wasn't challenged any. He didn't have to win any duels. There wasn't any overtaking he had to do. By the time he was overtaking cars, it was because they had blue flags. So that was really it. So from that perspective, like a tremendous front running performance, and that's not a knock. He's the one who put it on pole. He's the one who made sure that he broke the DRS and just zipped on ahead from Leclerc, who looked like he had to lift and coast from the start of the race. But still, he got himself in that position when everybody else was struggling, Max and Oscar included.
The chaos that was behind him is kind of, I mean, Lando kind of had such a clean race that we gotta talk about him from the start, and we'll talk more about, again, the implications a little bit later. But I want to talk about these wild first few laps, because you had turn one, lap one, where it was basically a three-man show between, I think it was Max, Charles, and Lewis, all kind of in one little thing. Max gets forced off. He basically decides to mow the lawn a couple of times and gets back in. He gives his place back to Lewis Hamilton. Lewis, a couple laps later, they get into a scrap. He has to go off. He locks up, and then he inexplicably, maybe explicably, but also just, I don't like it, he got a 10-second penalty. I want to discuss this 10-second penalty because in a race where several guys went off track, there was a lot of rubbings racing. As me and Doug, we were watching together with our friend Sam, there was a lot of rubbings racing going on the first few laps where cars were hitting each other. Cars were forcing each other off the track. There were cars who were trying to take apex. Max even, at one point tried to, kind of cut off Lewis Hamilton on a turn, and they collided right before Lewis locked up on turn 4. After all of that, they give Lewis not a 5-second penalty for running off and not using the entirety of the safety, or I guess the escape route, but they give him a 10-second one. And I think the 10-second part is unfair to me because it tells me, if I didn't watch this race and I heard Lewis got a 10-second penalty, that tells me he caused the crash. And he didn't. He actually, locked up and went off to avoid crashing into other people. He did the right thing. And because of that, Andre, he's penalized 10 seconds. And it effectively ruins his race because he was sitting in third with a chance to get his first podium. He was running really well. And unfortunately, the 10-second penalty means he has to fight back from down 14.
I hate this. Everything about this was stupid. And even Ferrari's communication to Lewis about why he got the penalty was stupid, because at first they told him it was the wrong thing. And we never heard if they clarified it, but apparently they did. But that kind of thing in the middle of a race will piss you off and distract you. Like, give him accurate information. It may still piss him off, but at least he has accurate information. When you have to come back on the radio and be like, oh, actually, my bad, this is actually what happened. It's just like, it's annoying. So Ferrari in communication, I don't know what they need to like scale. Don't corporate places go on these corporate retreats and like do like trust falls in the woods? Like, I feel like they need to do something like that because their communication is awful. But let's get back to like this penalty. This is why I really don't understand the racing rules. And I do feel like they need to have set stewards so that the decisions are consistent. That's the biggest problem that it feels like we have every single week, is that nothing is consistent. Max made an awesome attempt at a takeover. He was coming from way far back. You got to do that when, Lewis is one of the late breakers anyway, even though that Ferrari is kind of lift and coast. So he can't really do his late breaking thing, but he's really good at doing that. So Max trying to get him at the end of the first straight, well, the longest straight in F1 on the calendar, you had to come back from a long way and kind of surprise him. And Max did that, except he lost control of his car and it started to slide and he hit Lewis. To me, it should not matter if you are ahead or whatever, the rear mirror, the wing, the axle, all that stuff. It shouldn't matter. If you're not in control and you need to hit the other car to keep yourself on the track, that means you did something wrong and you have to be penalized because you didn't make a clean overtaking maneuver. And that was noted. It eventually went to the race directors, the stewards, and they said, nah, that's fine. As far as Lewis's 10-second penalty goes, this is another thing that bothers me about this, is I think that the stewards don't want to get involved, But in not wanting to get involved, sometimes you leave things up because you don't really know in the heat of like a race and all the other things a team and a driver have to think about. They don't know what the stewards really want from them. So apparently, and this is what I've heard from a few of the review podcasts that I've heard from The Race and Miss Apex and a couple of the others, was like the reason behind him getting that penalty was that he came out, rejoined the track and had a advantage. So basically he cut a corner and he gained too much of a time advantage on the other cars. Well, then tell him. Like, that's the other thing. Like, just tell them, like, hey, you're going to have to back up or we're going to give you a 10-second penalty. I don't know why stewards can't just communicate that internally so that you don't have this surprise 10-second penalty. Obviously, Ferrari probably should have known that. But still, I think if you just communicate so that everybody knows and you're not ruining a driver's race, because, again, this could have been Lewis on the podium. That would have been awesome. That would have been a great story for F1. I mean, you got a great story anyway, but, like, you still could have had more things instead of this random penalty pops up and it kind of comes out of nowhere because how far back should he have dropped? Who knows? Like, what is it? What's the time that he should have dropped back? Did he need to only be 2.5 seconds ahead, 1.8 seconds ahead? Like, he was ahead, so he didn't make up a position, but he was too far ahead of the group, and that made it seem like he got an unfair advantage from leaving the track. And I just feel like if that's the case, then just tell him. It seems petty to just sit there and be like, oh, you didn't hit your brakes for those 2 seconds, so we're gonna get you with a 10-second penalty. I hated all of it.
I'll tell you this. I know what it wasn't. It wasn't a 10-second advantage. Right.
It sure wasn't.
I was going to say, he wasn't 10 seconds ahead.
Yeah, if it was a 5-second penalty, I would have not liked that, but I would have thought that was more fair than a 10-second penalty. Again, 10-second penalty is what you give people who run people off the track. You don't give that to someone who came back on the track a couple seconds ahead of where he was had he not left the track. I think that's just totally unfair. As you mentioned, and again, me and Doug were talking about this. Like, when he took the pit, he was in a position where he dropped from 3rd to 14th. Mm-hmm. Even if they appealed, they're not going to get that back. That's not going to save the race for him. It really cost them. And again, a 5-second penalty would have dropped him back to like 6th. And he still would have had a chance to maybe make up some spots and get into a position where he could vie for the podium. But a 10-second penalty ruined his race, Deepti.
Yeah. You guys have pretty much said it all, but it ruined his race. I don't understand. He didn't have a 10-second advantage anyway. 5 seconds would make. What I really want is to see like the decision diagram of like the stewards and how they go about choosing what's 5 seconds, what 10 seconds, because it seems very inconsistent across the board. And I think we've had other instances this season too, where we think like 10 seconds is too harsh. Like there was that one. I think it was Carlos Sainz who got a 10-second penalty that we thought was like too harsh. Mm-hmm. And then some people got 5 when they probably should have gotten more, or blah, et cetera, et cetera. And so I want to see this flow chart and see how they decide, because it seems super arbitrary. And Andre, yeah, I hate it too. It did definitely change his race completely. Ruined his chance at getting a podium on what would have been probably his best shot this season. And also, I think they've been inconsistent, like, in this race as well. So many people cut corners to, like, get advantage. Like, yeah, they made whoever it was swap back places. Except I think if you look at the turn 1 spot when they were all, like, four cars abroad, I think Lewis was slightly ahead of Charles when Charles went off. And then Charles came back ahead of Lewis, but wasn't made to swap places. So I'm like, should they have been? Maybe it was like, I don't know, they didn't show it clearly enough to see if like, whatever, if he was past the apex or half a car ahead, whatever it is. So that's also something where I'm like, you know what, if Charles had to go back, then like none of this would have happened. So that was another thing that kind of dictated the outcome of the race without them like realizing, because it was right at the beginning.
And that's kind of what I mean by inconsistency, because whatever the reason is that they didn't look at that, it could have been because it's Ferrari on Ferrari and you can tell the teams like, hey, it's up to y'all to manage that. No, you're the stewards of the race. If there's an unfair advantage happening by somebody going off track, then you have to go ahead and note that. It has to be reset. You can't just let it go because it's the same, livery on the cars. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. Like, it's annoying. And I think that Ferrari probably would have changed it around anyway. Like, yeah, okay, then you overtake Lewis or whatever. Or Lewis says, okay, fine, Charles can have the spot or whatever. I don't know how it would have played out, but I feel like it's kind of cheap. And when you do that, given that you also gave Lewis a penalty when he didn't gain an advantage as far as overtaking a car. It was just how far ahead he was. That's the other thing. Like, I get it. If you expect that you overtook a car going off the track, then yeah, okay, concede that position back. That's what you're supposed to do. But you can't have in your brain like, oh, I'm 5 seconds ahead. I need to be 2.8 seconds ahead. And so I need to hit my brakes. Like, that's asking too much, I believe, of the driver in that instance. And a given 10-second penalty for that is rough. But yeah, Deepti, I'm so glad you brought that up, because that is just more inconsistency when it comes to it. Because yeah, Leclerc absolutely got that position from Hamilton by going off the track. And nobody said anything about it. And they didn't even invest. They didn't even note it or investigate it at all. They were just like, guess it's Ferrari. Well, whatever. They can do whatever they want, I guess, except Lewis can't do whatever he wants because you're too far ahead. Now you have a 10-second penalty. Now your race is ruined. I don't know. I'm obviously, part of this is frustration from how the season has gone for Ferrari and Lewis Hamilton after it being like so iconic. The move, the photos, the spread he did, like all that stuff. It's so cool. Like, it's such a cool moment. Nobody really expected this to happen. And it's like Lewis and red is still awesome to see. But like, this was our, like Deepti just said, like, this is probably our best chance. We'll see what happens in the next 4 races. But like, this was great qualifying. The car looked like it came alive. The car, because of the altitude, and Deepti, maybe, I don't know if you can explain like why Mexico is weird and causes weird setups or whatever. But like, this was one of those things where they still had to do lift and coast, but everybody was having to raise their cars. So that wasn't a factor that worked against Ferrari like it has in just about every other race. And this kind of ruins it just because he was maybe 1.2 seconds ahead and nobody said anything until they slapped him with a 10-second penalty.
I hate it because, like you said, there was no communication by Ferrari. There was no communication by the stewards. We have had a race this year where Lewis Hamilton gets 10 seconds for going off the track and coming back too far ahead of his opponents. And he got 10 seconds. Meanwhile, a few races ago over the summer, Max got 20 seconds worth of penalties, and we were thinking that that was too little, right? For all the chaos he caused to earn those 2 10-second penalties. So I think in the offseason, they need to figure out, again, what a more standardized thing. I know there's room for interpretation. There's got to be room for case-by-case basis, sure. But they can't have it where they do this and then just leave it for not explanation until after the race, where nothing good can come of it. Like, even if Lewis got those 10 seconds back on appeal, it doesn't help him at all. And the fact that he fought all the way back to get into the top 10, I think is great. But it ruined what could have been a special moment for him. I want to talk about something a little more positive. Ollie Bearman, fourth place.
Ollie Bearman.
Fourth place. I love that
Haas
for the
gang.
kid. I think Haas gang, they're back up double points this weekend. So good on them. But I love that after the interview, the post race interview, where they kind of zoom in on his parents and his parents are crying. They zoom back at him. He's crying, looking at his parents, and his parents are crying, looking at him. And it was just a very touching moment for them and for Haas, where, Bearman was hooping, man. He was, getting closer to maybe trying to go after Max and getting Haas's first ever podium, but to tie for the best ever finish in a Haas and for it to be him in his rookie season, I think is great.
Oh, I was so happy. And just like, that incident with Max and Lewis fighting initially is what, like, that was when Ollie was so smart and took I don't know if it was the inside or the outside at that point, but anyway, he found an opening and shot up to P4, and then he just maintained it. And I think that was what the, like, most special part was. And he was in P3 for a long time, and people were saying, okay, could this be first Haas podium ever? Like, we've seen crazier things this season with Nico getting one, Hadjar getting one. So it was like in the cards for a while. But anyway, like, his best result obviously as a rookie, and then Haas's like second ever P4. I think it was Grosjean who got the other one, they said.
It was.
So yeah, just it couldn't happen to a better driver. Like, he seems beloved. We all love him, and like definitely deserves something good to happen to him. He's been hooping all season, and to like kind of have this come towards the end of the season just proves like why he was wanted so badly and why he deserves a spot on the grid.
Yeah, I think it's I think it's tremendous how far he's come this year. He's had some pretty shaky moments, but for him to kind of come back and have this, as you mentioned, Deepti, towards the end of the season, I think shows the improvement that we've seen from him on the track. And again, those flashes of why we think he could be in the sport for a very long time.
Yeah, I was so happy for Ollie Bearman, and honestly, like his dad was very funny to me, especially as when he made an overtake. His dad does like the most stiffest like white guy celebration ever. It was so funny to watch it because I didn't expect to see all that come out, and it was extremely
hilarious.
Howard
Dean. It was a Pia!
Yeah, exactly. I wish I had audio because it might have been exactly that. But yeah, it was extremely funny, but really good. And so I really love that moment. I've been a big believer in Ollie for a while because I just think that the dude is really fast. He loves racing. He loves passing people on track. You know, the whole chow thing from earlier in the season. Like, he's just such a fun personality and a really quick driver. And it just feels like it's always been kind of one or the other. He does well in qualifying, just pops up in Q3 and then can't maintain it in the race, or he's doing well in the race, but because he qualified so poorly, he's passing a bunch of cars, but that's to get to like P11. So like, you know, I wanted to see him put it all together, and it was cool. And actually, one of the coolest moments was when George was finally like, all right, I'm going to go chase him down. He couldn't. Ollie opened up that gap. Like, it looked like George was going to get him. And then suddenly he's out of DRS range. And suddenly Ollie is building a gap, 1.2 seconds, 1.5, 1.8. And it was like, oh, he is actually hooping out there. Like, he is not allowing himself to be like, oh, I'm in a Haas. This Mercedes is absolutely going to get me. No, he was keeping that position and really battling well out there. I have a question for y'all, though, because there was this moment where Max went on the offset strategy. So the soft tire was like the tire to be on. The medium tire was not. Everybody was just kind of hanging on. Suddenly, with Max on the charge, everybody decided we need to pit. Max was 7th. Every car between him and Charles Leclerc in second pitted. I don't know if Ollie should have pitted.
Because I don't know that he wanted to.
Yeah, because it feels like, especially because that virtual safety car ended up high, and obviously you don't know when that's going to happen, like if that's going to happen or whatever, but also maybe you can just tell Ocon, you know, just go ahead and tap somebody, you know, just do what you're going to do. We need to get a podium here. But I'm just like, I wanted to see somebody stay in Max's way, because it almost like the Max glazing never stops when it comes to like Sky Sports or F1, because yes, it was a great drive, but really those 5 cars got straight out of his way. He didn't have to work to pass any of them. They all pitted, giving him a clear run at Charles Leclerc. And yeah, he maybe would have got him on the final lap, but we really don't know. Leclerc is also a very aggressive defender. He does not mind moving under braking or zipping his car across the track. Basically, he'll drift it sideways if he has to make sure you can't pass him. He is really aggressive when it comes to defending. I don't know if he would have been able to pass him or not. I just feel like if there was some resistance, I don't know if Max makes his way all the way up to 3rd and gets on the podium. Maybe Ollie can hold on to that position long enough to where that virtual safety car secures the podium for him. I really don't know, but I understand why Haas didn't want to take that gamble.
It's hard to say because, like you said, they would have taken anywhere, I think, from like P4 to P6. So they weren't really like trying to keep a podium position. It would have been a great race for them anyway. And maybe they didn't want to like get into a situation where, you know, they crash out of the race completely or something, because these points were mega in the like constructors race as well. It jumped them up a few spots, I think. I would have liked to see at least one of them though stay out, like you said, and stay in Max's way, but it is really hard to say, especially because you don't know the virtual safety car is coming. And Ollie did a good job of defending Oscar, but like that safety car helped him keep Oscar away as well. And so the fact that Oscar maybe would have gotten him too, like I don't know if like I feel like Haas maybe did make the right call in kind of not guaranteeing, but like giving Ollie the best chance to be like top 5.
I think the funny thing, there's two funny things. One, I think he, when Ollie pits, I said to Andre, I don't think he should have pitted, but I also think a rookie Ollie is going to do what his team tells him. I think a 30-year-old Ollie who's been on the grid a few years might have a back and forth discussion about like, hey, is this the right deal? Like, here's what we could do, because he could maybe see that everyone else is going to the pits. Maybe we should stay out and see how this goes a little bit longer. Maybe try to go after Charles for a lap or two. I think the other thing, jokingly, is Ocon did so well, right? He got into the points as well. Usually we see him, the last few weeks we've kind of seen him down at 18th. That kind of the joke about maybe bumping somebody doesn't apply here, because he was also in the points, and now Haas is thinking, okay, we can jump up a couple of spots on the grid with both these teams in here. And I think maybe because of that, they made a conscious decision to save themselves by getting the double points, as opposed to maybe being aggressive and in the process perhaps losing a couple of positions and maybe getting Ocon out of there. So it's interesting that maybe they saw the light and said, let's just take these points that we got and run with them, and we can figure out how we could have maybe done better next time.
Yeah, I do get it. Like, it makes sense. That is Max charging on a soft tire. You've got mediums that you're asking a rookie driver to hold on to keep a podium position. It may not have worked at all. Probably wouldn't have worked at all, but it would have been fun to see him in Max battle. That would have been cool. Would have been cool to see Max go up against somebody. Like, what have we talked about? The rookies aren't really here for, oh yes, right this way, sir. Like, they will absolutely like battle if they have a car, they have an advantage. It's really cool to see. They don't have that baked in deference that a lot of other drivers seem to have when it comes to wheel racing with Max. Like, Oscar doesn't have it, and it's cool to see Oscar go against Max, because Max loses those sometimes. Like, it may be 60-40 in Oscar's favor. Like, Oscar does a really good job when it comes to wheel against Max, and it would have been cool to see what Ollie could do. I just wish that there was a little bit more belief in Haas, because this has already been a weird season. Sauber has a podium. Racing Bulls has a podium. Williams has a podium. Could have been y'all, but you're playing. I'm still happy with fourth, but I'm just saying it would have been really cool to see Ollie on the podium.
It would have been, and I think he deserved to be on the podium yesterday. And I think a couple of guys deserved to be on the podium, and things didn't go their way. But I think, again, he takes this lesson, and I see him continue to hoop the rest of the calendar year. I want to do a couple more things. I'm going to shift one down to when we talk about the races that we have. But the first thing, I'm bumping this up a little bit. Marshals, what are y'all doing? Why are y'all running on the track? Why are we playing Frogger during an F1 race? Why? Like, Liam Lawson, and you're doing it with Liam Lawson, who did the best driving of his life and not killing them. The fact that
I haven't seen the video.
Out. Yeah,
I haven't seen any proper video, except from like obviously like from the stands, a fan taken video. But I don't know whose fault did it. I think it's both their faults. Like, Liam, he's coming out of the pit lane. I don't know what what the view is. He's starting to speed up. It is still, like, I think yellow flags in that area, so he's still slow enough to be able to brake. But what is like the first rule you're taught as a kid? Look both ways when you cross the street. Like, if you see or hear one of these loud cars coming, don't try to run across. That will not end well. So yeah, don't know why they're playing Frogger across this track.
They had the view of Liam Lawson's camera. I've seen that, and to his credit, you can't see the people running across track until he's in the process of making that turn. It's not like he could see them and actively like slow down or something like that before the turn. He was in his turn and he goes, "What are they doing?" Like, he just sees them running across the street like pigeons, and I'm like, "Come on, man!" I think the video from the stands where everyone in that section of the stands, you can hear the ooh kind of gradually crescendo until Liam goes by. You hear them go, "Oh my God." Like, you can hear a couple people going, why are they there? It was just that could have been a disaster. And I joke that Liam Lawson like did his best driving, but he actually did a great job at avoiding them and getting out of the way. And FIA has to address that because in a sport where we always talk about safety, that is the dumbest thing that you could possibly do in a race.
That was so stupid. I don't know how that happens. Like that is so dangerous. Like it could have been an absolute catastrophe. Like the race has to be suspended. Like that's a massive just error. I don't know what the communication was, but it can't be that. Like I thought like that was outrageous. And that maybe is why they were so overly cautious when it came to the end of the race with that virtual safety car. Signs looked like he had gotten his car away from, behind the barrier. They did say they saw some smoke, so they were worried about fire. And I think that's the reason why the virtual safety car came out, because if they had to put out a fire, then he wasn't far enough in behind that barrier to where they wouldn't have to be near the track to put it out. But still, like just the variance between these two things, right? This is what I talk about with like the inconsistency when it comes to F1. They just can't get out of their own way sometimes. And it goes from the stewards and then it goes to something like this where you have such a dangerous event. They got super lucky that nothing terrible, tragic happened. Like it was so close. It was really dangerous for those marshals to be on the track at all, given that cars were coming around. And then it ends up that overcaution ends up kind of messing up the end of the race as well, because they're like, oh, well, we already had one instance. We can't have a second one. And it's like, yeah, yeah, obviously, but also look what's happening in your race. This could have been really interesting to see. Like, can Piastri do it? Can Max do it? Like, whatever. It would have been really cool to see. And the virtual safety car came out. And yeah, I hear the explanations and the reasons for it. And I'm not going to say it was completely erroneous, like it shouldn't have been. But again, it feels like a panic because of what happened with Liam Lawson earlier.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. So I want to take a quick break because I think the two other storylines we want to talk about sit within the construct of the Drivers' Championship and even the Constructors' Championship. So we'll be right back to discuss both of those things. All right, we are back, and we turn our attentions to the different races. Obviously, McLaren has wrapped up the Constructors' Championship, but the race for second in the Constructors' Championship is very tight. Right now, Ferrari, with their performance yesterday, has moved into second place by 1 point over Mercedes. Ferrari with 356 points, Mercedes with 355 points. And just behind them is Red Bull with 346. So entering the last few races of the season, you're going to have a nice tight race for second place here between three teams who have drivers who can go for it and help them get a bunch of points quickly. I say that where we now have to talk about the drivers' race because there is a new leader, ladies and gentlemen. His name is Lando Norris. Lando Norris has 357 points, 1 point more than his teammate Oscar Piastri. And again, Max Verstappen right behind them at 321 points. Russell with 258, Leclerc with 210. I say all that to say this. First of all, I think Max, despite the fact that kind of the path cleared for him to get into the podium, he had a great drive throughout the entire day, but also most especially within those last few laps. Andre, you kind of mentioned a little bit the back and forth he had with Charles Leclerc in the last couple of laps that was kind of ruined by the virtual safety car. And then on the other side, you have Lando Norris. His dog propels him to win the race, propels him into the lead in the Drivers' Championship, and his teammate Oscar is chilling down in eighth P8, and it felt like he was hooping, but it was kind of like what we've kind of seen from other drivers throughout the year. Like, yeah, they're hooping, but they're hooping back, in the middle of the pack here, and it's not really affecting the front of the race. But Oscar getting up a couple of points, a couple of places towards the end there, makes it where this is only a 1 point race. And Deepti, I turn to you. There's a lot to discuss with the Drivers' Championship and the Constructors' Championship, but I know you're our resident McLaren fan. So tell me about this building race and
resident
how
Oscar
it's now
fan.
switching. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Like you said, it was qualifying didn't go Oscar's way. Like it seemed like he was trying all he could. Didn't Something wasn't right with how he felt with the car. Couldn't get past P7 or P8. He started P7 after Carlos got that penalty, the grid penalty. But even, by turn one or whatever it was, he had dropped back even more. So he really started from like P11. So making it all the way up to P5, like he had a good race. And you could tell he was a bit more cautious than how he normally is, because there's some parts where maybe he could have tried to overtake a little bit earlier, or like a couple laps earlier than he initially did. But you know what? Like he wanted to be cautious, because any little bump, any like extra pit, any extra change, or like even a crashing out of the race, like a retirement, would have completely hurt his chances at the championship. So I think he was really smart. I think he did the best he could. If it wasn't for the safety car, maybe he could have made up another 2 or 3 points, whatever the gap is between P4 and 5. And I think it's like the extra 2 points would have put him, or kept him in contention or in first place for the championship. But 1 point back now, it's kind of what we wanted. I'm like kind of happy in a way that it's like come back to this, because back, what was the race where Lando retired because of the engine failure? And that point,
Zandvoort, wasn't it?
It was Zandvoort? Okay.
I think so.
Yeah. So at that point, he was 34 points back, and we thought championship race was over. And it wasn't even due to like his fault or anything. And so I'm glad it's come back to a point where it's like anybody's game now, and it's really like now a 3-person race. Because this is what we want as fans, is like actual racing all the way up to the end. So yeah, it's like, as an Oscar fan, it's stressful because, he doesn't have it in the bag. But as like an F1 fan, it's really, really fun to like have it go down to the wire.
Yeah, this was cool. I'll talk more about Oscar and his actual like driving performance a little bit later. Spoiler alert. But I do think that this was awesome to see, and it also gives us some information. Oscar still feels like his battle is with Lando, not with Max, because all he wanted to do was close the gap to Lando. He didn't care if he conceded positions or anything with Max. He wasn't trying to defend against Max or anything. Like I said, he was a part of that pit train that went like the 5 drivers in between Max and Leclerc. They all pitted, and he was one of them. They told him to pit to overtake, I believe it was Antonelli. And shout out to the McLaren pit crew. They actually did a decent stop. They didn't have their 3.5, 5.6 second stops, and they did it faster than Mercedes. So he was able to actually pass him in the pit lane, which, listen, you have to be a little bit of a nerd to be excited about something like that. But I was like, it's a battle of like pit crews all of a sudden, who's going to be able to release their driver ahead of the other. And so it was kind of cool to see that that's how they were able to get ahead of Antonelli. But I think the other thing that's funny about F1 and like all the punditry around it, all the podcasts that have popped up, the very serious podcasts as well, that I think a lot of them are good. And I definitely like listening to them, because there are people who know a ton more than me, obviously, about this sport. And I like listening to those people. But even a lot of those people are like, this is not the season we were promised. This is a bad season. Like, look at McLaren. They already clinched the constructors or whatever. Looks like Oscar's just going to run away with the championship. And now look, we got 4 races left, and we have a legitimate 3-way battle for the Drivers' Championship, including 2 teammates and one dude who already has 4 consecutive Drivers' Championships. I don't care what happened the rest of the season, earlier in the season. If they tell you with 4 races left, this is going to be the scenario that we're going to be in, you're ecstatic. And it's unfortunate that we spent at least a lot of the punditry around the sport spent a good half of the season talking about how the season was already over and it didn't deliver on the promises that it had going into it with the final year of a regulation set and yada, yada, yada. This is going to be fun as hell, and I'm so happy.
I think it's something that McLaren has a 350-point lead in the Constructors' Championship, and they have not yet wrapped up the drivers. It's not going to, we're unsure it's going to be one of the 2 McLarens, because Max has crept up, and then over the last few weeks, he has stormed into a position where he could take this thing. It's simply incredible. And I think, Max going after Charles in the last couple of laps, again, it was for him, it was about points. He was like, hey, these extra couple of points here could mean something at the end. It means I won't have to work as hard for positioning in the last couple of races to move up this grid. And I think it's interesting that he has found kind of a youthful exuberance in his driving over the last few weeks to kind of get back into this. He's kind of going for broke, which is something we haven't had to see him really do over the course of this 3-year run that he's had. I said 3. I didn't stutter when I said it. 2021. But I think the fact that he's kind of, oh yeah, the championship's over. I'm just going to go for broke, and going for broke is what's propelled him back into that race. I think is quite amazing.
Can I just say that of all the nicknames of that, because everybody's gone with some random nickname about Max, trying to chase down the McLarens, they landed on T-Max. Like the T-Rex from Jurassic Park with the eye looking through they've settled on that as the thing. They kept saying it, and at first I was like, what are they talking about? What is T-Max? And then I was like, oh,
J-Max.
this is what it doesn't. It's can we get Jason? Can we get Michael Myers? Can we make it something it makes more sense than T-Max? Anyway, I thought that was stupid.
Mad Max was right there.
Mad Max is what it always is, but they kind of reserve that for when he loses his cool and rams into George Russell for no reason. That's what they do. But T-Max was weird. The other thing I wanted to note though, so do we have to talk about booing? Do we need to pro clutch about some booing? Because Lando was booed, and that was really, really, really funny to witness, but also it was really unfortunate that the commentary team decided, instead of trying to find out why are a large swath of fans in Mexico, why are they booing? They never asked that question. They were just like, oh, I don't think it's right. It's 2025. Stop pro clutching about booing. What are y'all doing?
Well, first of all, before I want to get back to that, but the analogy that I had for Max is Freddy Krueger. Freddy Krueger runs 0.3 miles an hour and always catches up with people, right? In all those movies, right? You're running around the corner, they run around the corner, they're hiding behind the tree, they turn around, Freddy's right there.
Yeah, Jason too. That was the analogy Jason I went with, and I understand that nobody they ain't gonna listen to this podcast, and I understand that. But T-Max, y'all can do better.
They need to go back to the drawing board with that. And it's Halloween. They had many easy wins there. They had many easy wins there. But yes, please continue with Lando, because I think it's important that we discuss the fact that they just kind of glossed over the boo. And even Lando himself was kind of laughing it off. And I mean, he knows why. I think they all know why. They just decided to just kind of, let it dissipate.
I don't know if they know why, and the only reason I'm going to say is because sometimes white people be oblivious. I'm sorry, it's just a true thing. It's just a reality. They just be like, oh yeah, and so I'm sure they're not even thinking about it, or they might not even be thinking about it. But I just thought it was really poor to start finger wagging at the fans, and I also thought it was funny that they do the driver interview, all 3 drivers. Chat with them, and then Lando stays behind for one last question. That's new, never seen that before, and that's when the boos were really noticeable. He was kind of hurt by them. He was like, he started to answer, and then he stopped and was looking around like, is this really happening to me? And it was like, yeah, buddy. So apparently, and we'll see if this is what it really was about. I don't know if anybody's done any reporting on that actually, as a journalistic outlet, instead of finger wagging at a crowd of thousands of people, you might want to find out why those people, ask a question or two. This seems to be related. McLaren has been pretty friendly with Trump. He was invited into their race. This was last year. It was the Mexico GP, I believe. And he was invited there. He didn't meet
Miami.
Oh, it's Miami. That's right. Trump ain't going to Mexico. I should have known better. Yeah, it was in Miami. He said, Norris said he didn't get to see him in the garage. He was busy prepping for the race. This is quote, but he saw me after and he came up to congratulate me. So I guess an honor, because whenever you have someone like this, it has to be an honor for them to come up to you, to take time out of their life, to pay their respect for what you've done. And Trump said he was Norris's lucky charm. And he said something like, I don't know if he's going to come to more races, and said it was kind of special to be meeting with Trump. And one thing is yeah, okay. That's your basic thing. That's your standard language for meeting somebody when you don't want to start any nonsense or whatever. But That's probably why you got booed in Mexico. That dude is very openly quite racist about a lot of things, and including with when it comes to people in Mexico coming to the United States. He has called them rapists. He has called them criminals. He has called them animals. He does these things and says these things very consistently for nearly a decade now. So when you act like he's your buddy, and you are standing in Mexico with a microphone, and people are supposed to be, lauding you because you won a race, you're going to get some boos, and I feel like you can be a big boy and handle it.
It was also pointed because, as you mentioned, they had just done the interviews with him and Charles and Max, and they don't like Max either, right? Because Max was Checo's teammate for a while and was always giving him crap, and they love them some Checo. They're going to ride for Checo forever. And the fact that Max and Charles were both like excused from the interview, and then they said, "Hey, Lando, before you go, one more thing." They waited for those two to get out of the way, and then they started booing. There's a little bit of booing when like they interview, but like they're like, "Hey, no, like we just want to make sure Charles and Max knows this is not about them. Y'all are cool. Have a good, congratulations. Enjoy the rest of your day. Now you, Lando, we gonna boo you." Like that was a very pointed thing.
I will say, I watched on the F1 TV, and the commentators didn't actually say anything about the booing, which I was glad about because I saw your commentary, and I guess the ESPN guys were pearl clutching. A lot of the articles I've seen afterwards, obviously, like they didn't mention this whole Trump thing, but they think it's because of papaya rules, and that a lot of it is just like, whatever, Lando should give Oscar back a few points. They shouldn't have had to like swap places, yada yada. So that's what I guess the general media seems to think, is that it's purely because of that. Obviously, we won't actually know until, like you said, if they go do some proper journalism and go ask some of the fans why the booing was so loud. Lando himself was like, he's like, "Oh, it's kind of funny. I just laugh it off. Like people, it's sport. People can boo who they want." And then he also mentioned stuff about like, I guess in one of the post interviews with the three of them as well, one of the reporters asked like, "Oh, it might be because of papaya rules. What do you say about that?" And he's like, "Well, racing is racing. I should have won in Budapest last year, but I gave it to Oscar. He should have won in Monza this year, but whatever it was, like the swap." He's like, it is what it is. If you want to boo me, fine. Like, I'm just going to laugh it off. But you could tell he was a bit hurt that second time. And on like the podium too.
We ain't like the fans ain't that worried about papaya rules. They may not like it, but they're not singling him out to boo him because of papaya rules. Like that's a great nothing burger that they just probably put there to be like, yeah, that's probably the reason. And we know deep down the reason. Andre, last word.
I think it's so funny that I didn't even read that was what they were blaming, the papaya rules. I think that is so funny. This is what I say sometimes, why people be missing it. The point be right in their face and they be missing it. Like yes, Mexico fans are very passionate about F1. Obviously with Checo coming back, they're really excited. They're still locked into the sport and all of that. But I'm sorry, that entire country ain't full of nothing but full-on F1 nerds who are going to be so devastated about papaya rules that's why hundreds of thousands of people are going to boo. Well, all right, maybe not hundreds of thousands, but tens of thousands of people are all going to boo in unison because of papaya rules. That doesn't make any sense. So yeah, I hope somebody does some actual real reporting and actually listens to the people instead of going with weird and made up things, because there's no way that was the cause of the booing.
Saying it's papaya rules is a pile of bullshit. That's where we're leaving it. Wordplay. So we'll take a quick break, because on the other side, we got to get to recapping our predictions, and we hand out our Zoomy and Gloomy Boy Awards. So stick around. All right, we are back, and we get to our last segment of this episode. We get to review our accountability corner, and really for accountability corner this weekend, it's just myself and Ebony. Ebony's not on this episode, but me and her did the preview, so we're going to review what we predicted, and then we'll get to our Zoomy and Gloomy Boys. First, for actual podium prediction, I predicted Max, Charles, and George. I was close-ish. Max and Charles both made the podium, and George we forgot about George. I don't even know where he was in this one. But that's par for this
I'm
course.
waiting to talk about Spicy George.
Spicy George. Yeah, we're going to talk about Spicy George in a minute.
Yes.
Ebony had Max, George, and Oscar. She got one of those right. So there we go. For constructor scrap, of course, we could not pick McLaren because they've already clinched. We cannot pick Alpine. The actual most from a constructor was Ferrari with 22 points, and the construction with the least amount of points, all was 0. Racing Bulls, Aston Martin, and Williams. I went with Ferrari being the most and Racing Bulls the least. So yay me! I finally won one. This is great. I got both of them right. Ebony had Ferrari and Williams. She also gets both of them right. A+ effort on the accountability corner.
Well done to you two.
Yeah. I'm gonna take this lap over here, this victory lap. But before we do that, let's get to our Zoomy and Gloomy Boys. Let me just recap the people who submitted that are not on this episode. Ebony went with Zoomy as Ollie. I think that's a great choice. And for Gloomy Boy, she went with Yuki. Kyle, I'm gonna get to a Zoomy in a minute. The Gloomy he has is Carlos, but the Zoomy are the viewers that got to listen to George's radio. I think that's fantastic. Deepti, I think this plays into what you're going to talk about with regards to spicy George Russell.
George, from the get-go, from the turn, I think it was lap 6 when Max went off track and George tried to get past. He was talking, he was like, oh, what are they going to do about that? He should give the spot back. He was never ahead of Max. Max shouldn't have had to give any spot back, actually, because he was never ahead. But most of the spiciness came when Oscar was right on his ass and Kimi was ahead of him. And he kept saying that he had more pace than Kimi and he should be allowed to go attack Bearman. And he probably got on the radio 3 times to say that. And I wrote down some of my favorite ones. First one was when he first was like, I have more pace. Let me go, get past. Let's swap. And his engineer is just like, okay, well, you're free to overtake. Go race. Show us that you got more pace.
That right there was so funny.
It's that was the best. Give some sass back, but low key. And then twice again, he was like, he goes, I have a McLaren up my ass. Do you want me to let him pass? And then engineer's like, no, thank you. He's like, okay, just checking. Then third time's the charm. He finally was like, because they were like, oh, you got to work on, keep your back tires. We need these tires till the end. They're overheating. You need them. And he's like, well, I've got this McLaren behind me. I can't, cool down my tires or anything. He's like, let me just swap. So they let him swap. And he's like, okay, if I can't get Bearman, then I'll swap back. Guess what? He can't catch Ollie. So eventually, when Oscar does finally pass him, and then Kimi's behind him, Kimi gets on immediately and is like, okay, when are we swapping again? Because that was the deal. And they do, given it, he can't argue that. But that was just so funny. I thought it was so funny that, George does annoy me a lot of the times. I was about to say sometime, but it's a lot of the time. And this actually made me laugh so much and was so funny to me, where he tried as hard as he was being so spicy to his engineer and he just couldn't follow through with it. And I was like, that's kind of karma for being like that and trying. I mean, I guess good on him for, it was a smart deal to make, okay, let me try, I'll give the spot back, and it didn't work out. But still, it was just, he was kind of being bitchy and a baby, and it didn't work out for him.
George is gonna have to put some money in the swear jar. George usually is the one coming up with the weird swears, "Gosh darn it" or whatever. That's usually the kind of, remember the yabba dabba do. That's the kind of stuff you get from George Russell. But he was full on dropping bombs on the radio, which I thought was amazing. But also very, very interesting to see how they handled this, because I think that Mercedes definitely made the wrong call. If you switch him early, maybe he can. He has enough life in those tires to go get Ollie. Now, can he hold on to those tires in order to keep that position? Who knows? Maybe, probably. George is pretty well experienced at this point, so you think maybe. But I thought that was kind of a shitty thing to kind of hold him up and then finally make the decision. But with them both signing new contracts with Mercedes, very interesting that they weren't like, oh yeah, you're our number one driver. Antonelli, move aside. He's got to go and get that. They were just like, oh well, yeah, you can overtake him if you can. Like you can go ahead. You're free to do that, but we're not going to give the team orders. And then 5 laps later, they kind of step on their toes then and do it anyway. Which at that point, his tires and brakes were cooked. Like his brakes were burning. Which is another funny thing. His engineer said, "Yeah, well, I want brakes at the end of the race." That's what he said to George. They were having some hilarious radio messages, and I was here for it.
The funny part about the where his engineer said, "Oh, you're free to overtake." It was almost like when you ask for something and a kid asks for something and they have a bratty tone, and the parents like, "That's not how we ask for things. Like, start over." That was like you're free to overtake. You can ask that again nicely in a lap, but right now I'm not going to answer that. And then he did it again. They're like, okay, like we still haven't learned that this is not how we ask for things. And then I think finally they're like, okay, he's probably right, but like we needed to make that point. So I thought it was funny. Deepti, did you give us your Zoomy and Gloomy?
No, I had the same as you, so I'm going to change it actually. For my gloomy, I think I'll go with Fernando Alonso. We didn't see him much this race, but Mexico's never been good for him, and we're not even sure why. I don't think they showed it, at least on the feed that I watched. He had to retire about halfway through, and this is the third season in a row that he's had to retire at this Grand Prix. So not a great weekend for him.
That man quit.
I think
he quit.
Maybe.
I'm pretty sure he quit. I think they made him get out of the way of Lance Stroll, and he said, "Nah."
That's what. I think it was as soon as Lance passed him, he's like, "All right, I'm done."
Yeah. So, see y'all in Brazil.
Yeah, he's my gloomy, and then for Zoomy, I would do a unanimous Ollie, but for my second choice, I guess I'll go with Max, just because he it's not just this week, but the last 5-6 weeks, and I think they showed a stat at the beginning. They were in the last 5 weeks, Max himself has scored as many points as Lando and Oscar combined, and that's why he's in the championship race now. And we already talked about how good he did, especially in the last few laps. So I'll give it to Max.
That's fair. I'm honestly, I have Ollie as my Zoomy. It would have been unanimous. I think it's fine because I thought he hooped for sure. I have my gloomy as Carlos because kind of like Fernando. I mean, first of all, he had the five place grid penalty to start the race, and then from there it just got worse for him, and he had to retire the car in the middle of the race. So
hold on. Can you detail how bad it was? Because it's 5 place grid penalty. It's 2 speeding in the pit lane violations.
Yes.
So that meant 2 10-second penalties. I forgot about
the second one. I remember 2, the first one.
Apparently their pit limiter was messed up, so it was messing up, and he couldn't figure it out. He got 2. Then he got a third one, which gave him, instead of a 10-second, it was a drive-through penalty. So he had that, and then he spun with 2 laps to go out of nowhere and ended up with the car smoking and trying to get it behind the barriers, but he's the one who caused the virtual safety car. That's a bad day.
It's a bad weekend. That man needs a Snickers because man, that was bad. Andre, your Zoomy and Gloomy.
Yeah, my Zoomy, I agree. I think unanimously we're all saying Ollie is kind of who deserves it the most, and he did win driver of the day as well, which was great to see, and kind of an obvious choice. But I'm going to go with Oscar for my Zoomy boy. And the reason is because I think he did a very good job, especially after the start that he had, the qualifying that he had. He was struggling around this track the majority of the weekend. And he kind of put some things together and figured out how to drive this car. Now, I don't know if his race engineer needs to be telling all his secrets and his business in the streets. I don't know why he's doing that. But he said these high ride height, low grip tracks are not suitable to Oscar's driving style. That Lando is really good in those conditions, and that's why Lando was smoking out there. But Oscar was routinely 7/10 behind, 6/10 behind, 5/10 behind, and for teammates with a dominant car, that's almost like Red Bull second driver territory. That's bad. That's not where you're supposed to be. But apparently he did a lot of learning. He figured out how to drive that car. He doesn't like when the car slides around a little bit. He likes to feel in control of it, but he learned to kind of control that a little bit more. And so it just feels like it was a good weekend of him learning how to cope with these conditions. Because don't forget, Oscar is still a very young driver. Like, he's with McLaren and he's been leading this drivers championship for several races, but he is not, like, it wasn't predestined that he would be the one in this position. People thought it would be Lando. You thought it'd be maybe George Russell. Like, you thought it'd be so many other drivers than him. So the fact that he is still learning out there, still kind of developing as a well-rounded driver, I thought this was a very good weekend for him from that standpoint. And my gloomy boy is George for all the reasons that we just mentioned. George being so hot, and then he couldn't get close to Ollie because he cooked his tires trying to in between Piastri and Antonelli. Extremely hilarious day for him. Didn't go very well, and of course he was very mad and gave us some classic radio messages. And yeah, has to put a lot of money in the swear jar.
A lot of money in the swear jar. It's very. It made for it encapsulated the chaotic weekend that was the Mexico City Grand Prix. Thank you both.
One more thing. I was like, Megan's not here, but I'm just going to assume her Zoomy was Charles and her Gloomy was Lewis, because we talked about, we didn't say much about Charles actually, but he did have a really good weekend. But yeah, the Ferraris went both different ways this weekend, unfortunately.
Yeah, I really hate the penalty. I'm not going to belabor the point because we could be on here for another hour about it. But that will do it for this one. Before we wrap up, a couple of things. One, obviously, we have a break in the schedule. We have Interlagos coming up in a week and a half. We will be back, obviously, to preview and review that. But also, for those of you out there, go to our Instagram.com/DRSFC_pod. We have our first episode of the cool down lap, which is kind of immediate reactions to the race. Ebony got on with one of our listeners, Angela, and they had a nice 5-minute conversation or so about the race, basically essentially right after it happened. So definitely go check that out. Let us know what you think of it. Let us know what you think of this and all of our episodes as well. We love when you rate, review, subscribe, tell your friends about it. That's how we continue to get more traction, pun not intended. We will be back very, very soon. We're going to have a brief break. Maybe we will get the 2026 regulations out. We're going to figure out how to get those out. There's a couple episodes we need to do in the meantime. But until then, for Andre and Deepti, I am Donald. Thank you so much. It's time for us to get out of here. And also, very quickly, thank you to Kurt for taking over our Instagram during the break, during the race. We really appreciate him being live on site to provide some of the commentary there. So for Kurt, for Ebony, for Angela, for Andre, for Deepti, I am Donald. Vroom, vroom.
Vroom, vroom.